Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow. We are back here in Studio 130 for take 2 of today's episode of the gold standard in Iowa conservative entertainment. We have a very special episode today. Today we have Sarah Curry in studio. So welcome, Sarah.
It's great to be back.
Is it?
It is, yeah.
Okay, good. I think we've had a really busy day. So usually a lot of times we record in the morning. This is actually a late afternoon because we've had a really busy day.
We've been
everybody here
working,
really getting through a lot of stuff. So it's exciting, kind of organizational things that I know you're excited about, I'm excited about, and just directionally everything's going great around here. But we actually have to talk about policy today, which before we go any further on this, I got to tell you that we have been getting regular listener requests for you to be back on the show.
Really?
Yes. That it's like, well, you need to have Sarah on more often. Like, I hear this. I'm not kidding.
See, it's hard for me to believe that because my husband's always like, can we talk about something other than taxes?
Well, there are people out there that don't love talking about taxes and the local government finance. That's the other thing. But yet they are out there. But no, I think seriously, one of the things that, we talked about things organizationally around here that we keep coming back to is how frustrated Iowans are with their property taxes and just kind of a hunger for more information. Mm-hmm. And maybe maybe even more so than their frustration with their property tax level is I just don't really feel like I know what's going on.
I think that's really the root of it. People are like, I care and I feel like something's not right, but I don't know what it is and I don't know what to ask for or who to talk to. And it's that uncertainty.
Right. And so I think that's where a lot of your work comes to play here is, we've talked a lot about ITR local and the information that's there, but you directly provide a lot of that content that people really want to know, like what's going on. And that's where,
And a lot of the ideas I get are from people that call in or email or, us and say, hey, what does this mean? What does that mean? And that really helps because if you don't understand what it is, then I need to kind of break it down and simplify it for everybody.
I think that's a really good point there that a lot of our work in this area is reflective of what people are telling us.
Yeah.
We're not just sitting here in our offices dreaming up what we think people should believe. This is our members telling us, contacting us, hey, this thing's happening here. You should take a look at this, and then we report on it.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, very good. Well, now that we got that cleared up, we've been sort of teasing this out that March would be a big month for local taxpayers in Iowa.
Oh, and it is.
It is. There's a lot going on. So I want to try and unpack some of that for folks so that they can be ready for it as it happens. So what do you have today that folks need? What's first up that folks really need to be paying attention to in the month of March or next steps?
Well, for a number of communities, there's a local election. And it's more than just filling a vacancy on a city council or something like that. There's actually property tax implications from this vote. And we have some public measures. Some of them are property tax increases. Others are revenue purpose statements for schools. That sounds really not important, but it kind of is. So those questions are going to be on the ballot in a number of communities across Iowa. And then after the March 5th election, we will be getting notices mailed to us about local budget hearings and the proposals that our local governments want to spend.
Okay. So a lot of times these March elections, I think the question that I would get asked from people is, I thought we moved everything to November only bond elections. The answer to that is these aren't really bond elections. These are revenue purpose statements. And explain what a revenue purpose statement is and why it's treated differently.
Yeah. So Iowa has a sales tax. And so 1 penny of that sales tax is earmarked to go to our schools for infrastructure spending. And so what the revenue purpose statement is the purpose statement, what the schools can do or the purpose with this.
They're required by law to take that to the voters to say this is the things that that we can do with the money, right?
I mean, kind of. So a district doesn't have to have an RPS on file. And if they don't, that means that the money has to go towards property tax relief and spending on infrastructure. If the school district goes to the voters with a purpose statement, the reason why they're doing that is because they want broader authority with the money. And 9 times out of 10, that broader authority means they want to issue revenue bonds.
So I think this is important. And I want to, and I'm sorry to kind of cut you off on the definitional thing, but
no, you're fine.
Broadly, these local elections are very low turnout. Just
usually
very
historically,
low.
very low turnout.
We spent a lot of time working on turnout levels on this. Revenue purpose statement, those elections are, if there's nothing else on the ballot, are really low. And I suspect that in most
couple hundred votes decide.
In most of these local elections on March 5th, look, there's nothing else on the ballot than these local financial measures.
And they're not exciting. I mean, for the average person, they're really not exciting.
And because typically we just haven't paid much attention to them. Oh, they're just changing some technical language and they just have to do it. But what you're finding is that, well, okay, maybe it's just technical language, but some of the stuff actually really matters. And voters should be paying attention to it, right?
Yeah, so here's why revenue purpose statements are really important. So under the old law, there was a sunset, like when schools couldn't use save dollars anymore. And there was a law, you were there for that.
I remember.
And so it's been extended to 2050. So if these voters in these districts that have RPSs on the ballot, what the voters are saying is school districts, we're giving you this broad authority to use this sales tax money on infrastructure. And by the way, you don't have to check back in with voters until 2050. And so they get this broadened authority for 20 plus years for them to spend it. And, if you trust your school board to make the right decision, but I just like having the checks and balances of voters. And so every community is different and every school board is going to message this a little bit different. But I have a problem with voting on something and never hearing about it again for 20 plus years.
Well, the problem is you may trust the city or the school board that you have now.
Right.
But that's not the school board that you're going to have in 20 years. So, and I get that it's just a long time out in the future.
It is. And the problem with these revenue bonds, so revenue bonds are not approved by voters. They're approved by your board. And so let's just say a school district needs to build a building, today, because there's an infrastructure need. Well, those revenue bonds can be paid off over 20 years. So let's fast forward to 2044. All that money's been tied up paying off this bond. Do we think there's going to be infrastructure needs in our schools in the next 20 years? I am sure there's going to be technological advances that our kids need by then. And so 2 things are going to happen. Either the kids aren't going to get the advances that they need, or the schools are going to come and say, we need more money, which means property taxes go up.
Yeah, the problem, I was there when we extended SAVE. It was in 2019, I believe, right?
Yeah.
It's sometimes all those years are a blur. And the argument at the time was we're coming up to the deadline. We need to be able to bond for certain projects beyond, I think it was 29 at the time was when it was originally set to expire. But SAVE was a very generous program because we had at the time a lot of aging buildings in Iowa. And there was especially, the fast-growing Waukees of the world might not have had the same. Actually, Waukee may have actually had the problems. They're growing so fast. We really did need to replace or fully remodel a lot of buildings over a period of time. Well, it's okay. We met that need. There's a lot of brand new school buildings around the state of Iowa. Why do we need to do it again? And it's already been a lot more money flowing through that system than we anticipated that it would be when we passed it 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah, because sales tax is a percentage of what you spend. So just think, inflation, the prices of everything have gone up. So the money the schools are getting from the sales tax just keeps going up and up and up. And, the concerns I'm hearing from one community, the district wants to build a daycare using a revenue bond. So they're looking to extend their revenue purpose statement so they can do this. And the citizens in that community are saying, wait a second, why aren't we replacing the HVAC and the roofs and fixing these core infrastructure things in our schools before building a daycare? they understand that daycare is important, but is that really a function of the taxpayer to provide that? And so there's these questions that are going on, and it's not a vote on a tax per se. It's on how they are able to use the tax. And so that's why I think it's a very important vote, even though it might not get the headlines it deserves.
I'm going to take a small detour here. I know that we've reached a point where we have government trying to fix a childcare problem. Mm-hmm. But now here's schools that want to build daycare centers, and we're providing tax credits to businesses to build daycare centers. At some point, maybe we need to stop trying to find government solutions to a problem.
I'll give the community of Tumwa a lot of credit. So they have like a chamber economic development group there, but they went out and got private donations and grants from people in the community, and they've built 2 daycare centers for their community, and they didn't cost taxpayers anything. That's really how it should be done to fill the need in that community. I don't think using tax dollars, especially property tax dollars, is appropriate for daycare when it serves a very small amount of children. And look, I've got young kids. I understand the need for daycare, but I also don't think it's my neighbor's job to be paying for it.
I agree, and I'm not even saying that there isn't a role for government to be part of the solution, although it shouldn't be the first place we look. But I love the idea of trying to get the private sector involved, because ultimately, if the private sector thinks that lack of childcare is a huge obstacle to economic growth, and they need to be part of that. And I know they are, but it's because where does it end, right? Because housing being another challenge. Are we going to have government provided housing across the state of Iowa? I mean, anyway, I just wanted to throw that up, that before we spend, I don't know where this community is, a bunch of property tax dollars that are supposed to be for school infrastructure on a daycare center, maybe we should at least stop and ask the question. That's all I'm saying.
No, I agree with you, because, my kid's in school and their air conditioner's not working. I mean, what was that one community we found out last summer? They don't have air conditioners in some of their elementary schools. What was that?
Was it Dubuque, maybe?
So it was Dubuque?
I think it was Dubuque.
Okay, so there are schools in Iowa that don't have air conditioners, yet we're going to take infrastructure dollars that should be paying for things like air conditioners. And I don't know if Dubuque has a daycare center, right? But in some districts, we're taking that money away from other real infrastructure needs and building daycares or building athletic complexes or new concession stands. And I think there needs to be a prioritization within our schools on how they spend the money. And that transitions into the other elections that we're going to see on March 5th, which are PEPL levies. And so PEPL levies are equipment, essentially, it's a property tax levy specifically for infrastructure and building. And so they go hand in hand. Sorry, I got on.
No, I think that's right, because here's the question that you and I have talked about. Well, okay, so we've got PEPL and SAVE. How many different revenue streams do we need to have for school buildings? Right?
Am I allowed to go off on this again?
Yes, you are.
Okay,
that's what the podcast is for. And that's why the people want you here, Sarah. They want to hear you go off.
So I want everyone listening to go to ITR Local, pull up your school district, really any school district, and scroll down to the very bottom, and I want you to look at the property tax levies. Okay, so now we have SAVE dollars. That's not on there because that's sales tax money that goes to infrastructure.
Just flows straight to the school,
And oh, by the way, there's over $1.1 billion in SAVE money that schools are just holding on to, and they haven't spent it yet. That's a whole new podcast.
I think somebody should put together a report on that.
Oh, man, really?
Yes, I do.
You think I should go do that? Okay.
So believe it or not, there's actually just all this SAVE money just sitting there, not being spent.
Right. So on top of all the SAVE money not sitting there, right? So then if you look at your property tax levies, there's what's called a regular or a board-imposed PEPL. That's 33 cents. Every single district in the state has that levy.
33 cents, meaning per $1,000 evaluation on your home, right?
And your school board approves this every single year.
So you're paying that in addition to the sales tax dollars that
and
are
that's
flowing.
For infrastructure, right? And when that was created in 1990, it was because school districts needed money for infrastructure and they couldn't rely on voters to say yes every time. Totally understand that. That was before SAFE. So there's no reason to have that regular PEPL anymore. Then there's a voter-approved PEPL, which means you have to go to voters and you have to ask for it, for another $1.34. Then on top of that, we have our debt service levy, which if they're issuing general obligation bonds, which usually go to infrastructure needs, that can go up to $4.05. How many revenue streams do schools need for infrastructure? I'm not saying the infrastructure is not important, but come on, guys, really?
Well, yes, you're right. You have all these. The problem here, some of them are just legacy things that we've never gotten rid of because it's impossible. Especially inside of education, it's impossible to sort of sunset something or end something because then you're accused of cutting money. For
okay.
education.
So Clear Lake School District. Okay. So the PEPL levy was established in 1990. Okay. They've had a voted PEPL, so the $1.34, since 1992.
Okay.
And if you go to their PEPL information page on their website, they will say, we have had this since 1992. We are not raising property taxes. We are keeping it the same. Okay, I want everyone here to think about how much was your house worth in 1992? And how much is it worth now? I really think keeping the levy the same has increased your taxes. Let's be real here.
And think about that if you live on the lake. But because those have gone up dramatically. That's right. So PEPL was created and then SAVE was dropped on top of that.
It was first Silo in 1998, and then it turned into SAVE.
But we never got rid of these other...
We never got rid of them. Yeah. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm like, okay, guys, like the sales tax thing for infrastructure, like I can understand that. I can buy that. But don't keep the property tax stuff, too.
Yeah.
Like one or the other.
Right.
And then SAVE, they got over $1 billion sitting in savings accounts, and they're not using it. Oh, and by the way, our sales tax revenue is far exceeding expectations. Yeah. So they're just getting more and more and more of that. So if it's working, let's use SAVE and get rid of some of this property tax dependency. Let's give taxpayers a relief.
Yes, and I think we can achieve more of this simplification of property taxes by reducing the number of these different revenue streams. I get that SAVE is not property taxes, but you just listed 3 or 4 of them right like that just inside of school funding. You know, we've talked about the complexity of city and county revenue. We need to make this system easier.
And and that's the problem, right? If you live in your community and you have a PEPL levy on your ballot and you just want to understand it, you don't know the SAVE and to go here and go here for data. But what you know is your taxes keep going up year after year. So that's the other thing that I talk about. If you go to ITR Foundation, you can read about what is a revenue purpose statement and look at the details of the March 5th election. But I kind of go into, they're not telling the whole truth. So when they say this doesn't impact your property taxes, yes, it does. Yes, it does impact your property taxes. We haven't raised your property taxes because we've had this levy since 1992. Yes, you are collecting more dollars year over year. That is an increase in my property taxes.
Yes.
And so while they are technically by the law, I don't know how you want to say it, not lying, they're being extremely misleading to taxpayers. Now, if you're one of these people that says, hey, you know what, open my pocketbook, the schools, if they want it, they can have it, then this doesn't concern you. Yes,
at a minimum, well, let's let folks know what they're getting for that investment.
Right.
And make it simple. This is the investment in schools. Okay, so how many of these? So we have some revenue purpose statement votes, and what else do we have?
We have some PEPL levy increases, and then this one's good. The Hinton School District, they had a bond fail in November, so voters said no.
Yeah.
So Hinton said, okay, we're going to come back and ask for a debt service levy increase and a PEPL property tax increase. And they're anticipating another bond next year. But they're just going to go ahead and ask for the tax increase anyway. Oh, and here's the fun thing about PEPL. It includes in some districts an income surtax.
Oh, they can just kind of bolt that on the side of it?
Yeah. So for Hinton, it says PEPL and income surtax.
Oh.
In Marion Independent, PEPL and income surtax. North Cedar, PEPL and income surtax. So what that means is if you do your taxes at the very, very bottom, there's going to be that little number. And so whatever your Iowa tax liability is, they can slap a surtax on top of that.
Great.
My school district is at the top. We levy an 18% surtax in my school district.
How does that work again? It's the 18% of what?
So let's say your tax bill to Iowa is $2,000.
So you have another 18% on top of that?
On top of the $2,000 I have to pay.
Oh, that's outrageous.
It's an income surtax.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So how can folks figure out what this is all on ITR Local, right?
I think we have a
Or is it on ITR Foundation?
It's on ITR Foundation. So if you just go to the website, you can look up March 5th special election, or you can look up what is an RPS, and it'll pull it up there. But then I encourage you, if you're having that election, to go to ITR Local and just look and just see how your community is spending. Yeah. And I included in here the population growth and the property tax growth over a few years. So again, Hinton Community School District, their population growth here is like right at 2% over the last 10 years, and their property tax growth is at 34% over the last 10 years. And then the voters said, no, you don't need a bond. Oh, just kidding. We're going to come back and ask you for more.
That's
same thing with these RPSs. You know, we have some that had bonds fail, and now they're coming back and asking for an extension of SAVE, and they have enrollment declines and property tax growth. Like, why? What are we building for declining enrollment districts?
We have talked about this a lot, and I don't know that we've got a really easy answer, but the massive debt being taken on by declining enrollment districts that I think if we're all honest, many of them aren't even going to exist in the medium term, long term. Yet we're going to go behind the 8 ball to build a lot of big new buildings. It just doesn't make sense to me, but I don't know what the solution is, because ultimately it is up to them locally to figure it out. But got some ideas, but
yeah. There is one county, Louisa County. They have an EMS tax for 15 years that they're putting on there.
Okay. That's sort of unique. And I think that is ultimately...
You know, I don't have a problem with that, because I feel like emergency management is a core function of government. And if they need the money for that... Now, I might question, why do you need a separate tax? What are you spending your existing money on that you can't fit that into your budget? I haven't dug into theirs to see.
This has been a big thing at the legislature to do this over the last couple of years. It is still a local decision. It is still those folks locally that are deciding whether they want to fund that with their property tax dollars. So, just be aware that it's out there. And we're not telling you which way to vote on it, but educate yourself if you live in Louisa County.
Right.
I imagine there will be some good fiscal conservatives that will vote for it. I imagine there'll be some progressive Democrats that don't. I mean, it's a local decision. Cuts across ideological bounds sometimes.
And that's the thing. Some of these PEPL levy increases, I don't know what they want to spend the money on. Your district should be communicating that to you. And if you think it's a valid use of the next 10 years of your property tax money. Now, the other thing I want to tell our listeners, I asked all these school districts what the projected revenue from these PEPL increases is going to be. So over the 10-year time span, how much money are they going to take for you? So it's very easy for them to say, Lynn Marr, they're going to say, oh, it's only $1.34. You know that translates into $44.8 million?
It's a lot of money.
So when you look at it in those terms, you're like, oh, wow, that's a lot of money. That's going to raise my property taxes.
When you talk about these things in terms of a millage rate, or that we kept the rate unchanged, it's trying to take large numbers and reduce them to something that seems trivial.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of what goes on here. Okay. Well, I definitely want folks to go to ITR Foundation to get this information, to find out whether you're on the list. Now, there's a lot of Iowans that aren't on this list.
That's right.
That don't have anything on March 5th. But there is another very important, we're not going to get too far into the details because we don't know everything yet, but we're going to get a notice in the mail.
Yeah, and this is a brand new notice. So this was part of the property tax reform package that came out last year. And we're all going to get a postcard in the mail. I have asked to see the template of the postcard so that I can educate our membership on what to look for. And I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. But I would guess from the legislation, it's going to have your max levy rate on there, property tax levy rate, your budget, the percent or dollar increase, and then the time and place of your budget hearings. Mm-hmm. So that you can go. And so if you live in a city, it should have your county, city, and school. If you live in the county, it'll just have county and school. And that way you can go and you can voice your opinions. And I want to tell people, if you don't like what you see, don't get on Facebook and rant about it. Go talk to your local elected officials, because I'm telling you, they want to hear from you. And if nobody shows up at that meeting, they're going to vote for it.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about this a lot more leading up to those notices going out and the hearings being held. But we're just trying to get everyone to engage and to be aware of what's on the notice, the time and the place, and what sorts of things you should be talking about or questions you should be asking going into those hearings.
Yep. And ITR local, we're going to try to put together like a packet, kind of like a testimony sheet to keep everybody on track. Because I've been to some of these meetings, and it's very easy for the county supervisors to start blaming the assessor.
Yes.
No, it's not the assessor's fault your taxes went up. It's their spending.
And it is not your assessment. Your assessment is part of the equation, but is not the reason that your property taxes have gone up.
And so they do a very good job of pivoting and putting all the blame on the assessor, who of course isn't there. And then people get sidetracked and then they get off the hook. And we want to try to help people stay on point. What are they spending money on, and why do they need more of mine?
And the other one that they will use is to blame the legislature. For the legislature of creating a system that may have forced things or unfunded mandate, they will make up other reasons as well. And the bottom line number is, how much money did you spend this year? How much money are you planning to spend next year? And that's the amount that we have to fund as property taxpayers.
Right.
Is that increase in spending.
And I tell you, I've had to cut back on my family. I mean, my goodness, I've got 3 little boys going grocery shopping.
Oh, you're just getting warmed up.
I know, they're little. They're not eating like your kids yet. But we've all had to make adjustments with inflation, gas prices, right. and that's normal. But I don't feel like our government has been making the same adjustments.
No.
So inflation, so we need more of your tax dollars. Well, no, I'm sorry. I don't get to buy more groceries because of inflation. I have to buy less.
Inflation as an excuse for growing government by the same amount always rings a little hollow to me, because the rest of us are the ones that have to pay the bill on it.
Yeah.
Right? How about you tighten your belt just like we're tightening our belt? So
that's what we're going to try to do at ITR Local, is kind of just put together this guide with some talking points just to keep people on track. So when they try to pivot and get people off track, blaming the assessor or, inflation, we need 9% more. No, I'm sorry.
Yep. Well, I told you at the outset that I would try and get you out of here at a reasonable hour, and we are way over time already.
Oh my goodness.
Which is good. So it's always fun when we get talking about local government, right?
I have so much fun because you're engaged, and most people aren't that excited to talk about it.
Well, so and we've said this, the short version is folks need to go to ITR Local to get the basic information about what's going on in their local community. They need to go to ITR Foundation to get the information about these March 5th elections coming up. Right?
Yep. And if anybody reads these things and you have questions, look, my contact information's on the website. Just email me. I love answering questions about this stuff.
And provide feedback. We want to know what your experiences are.
Yeah.
I heard this. They're working on this project. Give us good stories. We like to give out helmet stickers here for local government when they're doing it the right way. Hey, I contacted my city council member, my school board member in wherever I live. And you know what? They got right back to me. They answered those questions, and I feel a lot better about their budget. We truly want to hear those stories.
Yeah, I want to hear the good and the bad. Yeah, I mean, please reach out to us. And you know what? If you've got a situation going on in your community and you want to learn more about it, tell me. Yeah. This is what I do for a living. Yep. I can dig into it and write an article on it.
That's right. So, well, good. All right. I'm going to let you off the hook now. But we are going to have you back very soon because there's excited. A lot going on and we need to cover it. So anyway, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe and tell your friends and leave us a positive review. And if you haven't yet, check us out on YouTube because you can then see our smiling faces on video. So with all that having been said, we will see you next time on ITR Live.